Today we're talking about the principles of curriculum and instruction. First, let's define these two terms, curriculum and instruction. If we look in the dictionary under curriculum, it tells us that a curriculum is the subjects comprising a course of study in school or college. And that's a very simplistic definition, is simply the subjects. But when we look at it more broadly, it's not just the subject like language arts or mathematics or social studies, but it's the different components of those specific subjects. So within mathematics, you might have addition, subtraction, multiplication. In social studies, you might have Civil War history and colonization and things like that. So the curriculum is what makes up that subject. And as we think about curriculum for any course, it's going to have a lot of small parts that make up the larger whole. It is essentially what we teach as school teachers. Now, with instruction, instruction is a detailed information telling how something should be done, operated, or assembled. Within the school context, instruction means how we teach, how we take that curriculum and get it to our students. That's our instruction. And we can think about different instructional strategies and learning activities. But just broadly, when we're looking at curriculum and instruction, we're looking at the how and what of teaching. Well, this course is broken up into 14 different modules. And as you look at our directory here, you see we start with the course overview. That's what this module is. And then we move into the classroom community, and then look at learning objectives, standards, contextual factors, backwards design, and instructional strategies. That gets us through the first half of the course. Then we take a short break. Then we look at lesson planning, learning activities, formative and summative assessments, differentiation, and the future of curriculum. If we go back to thinking about curriculum and instruction, we can kind of break all these modules up into those two categories. So if first we look at what we teach, that's going to take most of the course. It's going to look at how we set up a curriculum, how we use backwards design to do that, who should be included when we consider who we're creating that curriculum for, what should that curriculum be mapped to, what learning objectives and standards, and then starting to put together some lesson plans. So that's the what of teaching. The how we teach is a shorter part of this course, still really important to talk about in conjunction with the curriculum. So we're going to look at different instructional strategies and learning activities, and we're going to look at assessment. We're going to look at formative assessment, summative assessment, how to build a rubric. And of course, that ties in and goes hand in hand with lesson planning. And so it's really hard to separate these two ideas of curriculum and instruction. When we're in the classroom, they really go hand in hand. So why should teachers study curriculum and instruction? Well, the reason I'm really excited about tackling this topic for this course is those who are considering becoming teacher, this gives them a much better picture of what it means to be a teacher, because we look at how schools work, how a curriculum is built, what goes into a lesson plan. We're looking at who our students are and what are the factors that make them different from students in a different state or in a different country. As we create lesson plans, that experience of going through the lesson planning process, utilizing backwards design, thinking about assessments, thinking about standards and learning objectives, that's a really worthwhile activity to do, because it helps you get into the mind of a teacher of how can I take something that I want to teach my students and deliver it in the way that's most effective. And finally, this really is experience and practice in teaching. As we write lesson plans and consider the lesson plans we have, this prepares you for teaching. And so that's why teachers need to study this. Now, here's your first mini lesson. Anytime you look at designing a curriculum, you want to start with the end in mind. You want to think, what are the outcomes for my students? And then you develop an assessment or some way of showing what students have learned. And then you decide what to teach so that you can get to that assessment. And so this system of backwards design is really critical. And in thinking about this class, I had to think, what are those student objectives? What do I want my students to come away from? And so I came up with 6 different learning objectives for this course. And I just want to go over those with you quickly. First, we want students to learn how to build content knowledge to plan relevant learning opportunities to respond to student needs. This is really crucial because a lot of times when we think about teaching, we think of simply being with students. We don't think about their individual needs, nor do we think, how does the curriculum tie into those needs? And so we want you to know how to build up that different content knowledge. Number two, we want students to learn effective instructional strategies to engage students and promote learning. This is the how of teaching. This is the instruction. There are a lot of different strategies that you might use, and some of them are different in a face-to-face environment versus an online environment. We're going to talk about both in this classroom, but simply being made aware of the most impactful and effective instructional strategies, that's going to go a long way. Learning outcome number three, students are going to learn to use assessments to interpret data for the purpose of making decisions that will advance their teaching and learning. It's really critical that we think about assessment when we think about lesson planning, because whether it's a formative assessment, which will help us to teach more effectively, or a summative assessment, which will help us to understand what our students have already learned up to this point, both of those kinds of assessments can give us data that will impact our instruction and make us better teachers immediately, but also in the future as we continue to teach. Student learning outcome number four, students will learn how reflective practice enables them to advance student learning and grow professionally. And we really want our students to become reflective practitioners, to consider their own experiences and how that ties into these new things that we're learning. So throughout this class, we're going to give you different reflective questions to consider and opportunities to write down responses to those reflections or to create videos in response to those questions. So we truly do want you to become reflective practitioners. Student learning outcome number five, students will develop multiple lesson plans aligned with their content of interest. And that's the really exciting part of this class, is as you go through these different modules, you'll learn about what it takes to construct a curriculum, but you're also going to create your own lesson plans, and you're going to be able to choose what content area, what grade level those lesson plans are for. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to create those in this supportive environment. And finally, the last learning outcome is students will develop a partial unit plan aligned with their content of interest. What we're going to do is create several lesson plans that go together as part of a whole unit. And it's not just that we're creating a lesson plan and having a unit planner for that, but we're going to do a mini case study where we look at a specific school district and what makes those students different, so we can differentiate instruction within those lessons. And so part of the unit planner will include kind of a case study that shows this is what makes this district and this school unique. And here are the lessons that I'm going to teach with the specific learning outcomes that I'm looking at. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish in this course. As we look forward to module number 2, there are 2 questions I want you to consider and reflect on. Question number 1 is, why should teachers teach to the test? We also often talk societally about how horrible it is to teach to the test in this high stakes testing world that we live in. But there is a reality where we write better tests. The idea of teaching to the test is actually a really positive thing that we should encourage our teachers to do. So I want you to think about that question. What would make the situation ideal so teachers should teach to the test, and what would that look like? Our second question I want you to consider is the role of community within the classroom. Why does community matter when it comes to curriculum and instruction? Can we create a lesson plan, a generic lesson plan that is all-encompassing, that works perfectly for everyone? Or do we have to think about our audience more specifically? And if that is the case, why? Why does it matter that a class is this way or that way? So what is that role of community when it comes to curriculum and instruction? That's it for this lesson. I'm looking forward to next week where we talk more about the classroom community. Have a great day. Bye.